Hello, and welcome to my presentation on True Identity, reconsidering a 14th century Buddhist painting of the Water Moon Avalokiteshvara in the Rajaks Museum by Ching-ling Wang. Ching-ling Wang is a prominent art historian of pre-modern Chinese art and cultural exchanges between Europe and Asia. Also, he focuses on literati painting and Ming and Qing dynasty court art. He's a curator of Chinese art at the Rijksmuseum Museum in Amsterdam, in the Netherlands. Wang argues that previous scholars were wrong, as in they misidentified the Avalokiteshvara in his article. This work was exhibited as a Song Dynasty painting in 1936, and Jan Forstein, a former Rijksmuseum Museum curator, would label this painting as a Koryo Buddhist painting in 1986. However, Wang argues that this is not a Goryeo work, rather, it is a cultural blend of Japanese, Korean, and Chinese elements in Buddhist art by a Japanese artist. As for his methodology, Wang uses iconographic analysis, stylistic analysis, comparative analysis, and also a little bit of archaeological analysis. He compares the Rijksmuseum Museum Avalokiteshvara to other paintings from the era or nation to see the similarities. He tracks the iconography and style through China, Japan, and Korea using archaeology such as the paintings and sculptures found in Nanghuang caves in China. Here are some terms that I had to Google while reading this article. The Ningyo school is a style of Buddhist painting that emerged in China during the Song Dynasty in the 14th century. It emphasizes use of color, and it may have been very influential on Korean and Japanese art. The Tangyut Kingdom refers to a Tibetan tributary state that China possessed during the Song Dynasty. The area was held until 1038 and was connected to a trade route from Central Asia to Europe. Luminosity refers to luminous quality. Heian period refers to early medieval Japan from 794 to 1100. The Kamakura period in Japan refers to the later medieval time period from 1185 to 1333. Wang uses iconographic analysis. His main points with his iconographic analysis are to point out the differences and evolution of half lotus pose and royal ease pose. Half lotus pose describes a pose where one leg is crossed over the other and the other leg is dangling. This changed to royal ease pose where one leg is bent and supporting a resting arm. It's a very reclining pose. The Rijksmuseum Museum Avalokiteshvara has a royal ease pose. Wang describes an iconographic shift, the blending of the water moon guanyin and white-robed guanyin in China. Shows the iconographic change. He says that this shows the iconographic changes of the Avalokiteshvara throughout China, Korea, and Japan, these three countries and their influence over each other, such as Korea is the originator of these styles, Korea makes a variation of these styles, and Japan uses both representations. Stylistic analysis of color and pattern. Wang argues that the Rijksmuseum Museum Avalokiteshvara seems Korean, but it isn't. It seems Korean because of the pattern of arabesque gold medallions. This is the pattern, this is referring to the pattern on the garment. This is what connects the Rijksmuseum Avalokiteshvara to many other Goryeo-Korean works and separates it from Chinese works. However, it is not Korean, as Wang says, because it contains a certain genericness or random filling in of these medallions. For example, the medallion at the top is the one featured in the Rijksmuseum Avalokiteshvara. And as you go further down, you'll see that it is rather generic because it has a bland pattern and there's no wrinkles or boldness or character. Wang also mentions off colors, such as mixtures of red and yellow, that create different value and intensity in color. The colors, in my opinion, are brown, with red being the most prominent color, but also blue and white are very prominent. Now these may have been rubbed off because Wang describes Goryeo Buddhist art as having three primary colors, those being red, green, and blue. We'll get into if these colors rubbed off later. Finally, he mentions the lack of white minute lines on the veil. These give the veil a sort of 3D effect or 3D appearance, and they're featured in other Goryeo Water Moon Avalokiteshvara works. But if you look at the painting, it's very flat. As for the figures in the Rijksmuseum Avalokiteshvara, he mentions ink wash shading, which is when ink is filled into certain areas to show folds of fabric and creates a dramatic contrast and decadent shadows. He says the folds of the clothes have a wavy line drapery, and the use of color to flesh out these faces, such as red outlines and blue in the eyelids, are Japanese techniques. For the evolution of style, he uses these evidences for iconography. Descriptions from the Lotus Sutra and Flower Garland Sutras, which depict the Avalokiteshvara in a bamboo grove with a large white nimbus. The first depiction of Avalokiteshvara found in the Danghuang Caves, 1,000 armed Avalokiteshvara from 943. And he also uses a willow and pawonia sculpture of Avalokiteshvara featured here to demonstrate the royal ease pose. He also uses images from miscellaneous records on specific deities, which is a Japanese guidebook to the creation, which is a Japanese guidebook on depicting Buddhist art and Buddhist iconography. As stated before, he compares medallions in the garment, which are seen on the veil in the right, and which are also seen on the clothing in the left, but you can see that it's very subdued and it doesn't jump out as much. He also compares the veils at the same time, saying that there's no 3D quality to it. It doesn't look like a real veil. It looks rather flat. He also compares colors, such as you see in the Water Moon Guanyin on the right. It's very colorful. There's lots of blue, green, red, almost pink colors. But in the Avalokiteshvara in question, it's very dimmed or subdued. There's a dark red color that's prominent, but that's about it. Um, he compares the techniques to Baisagaru and the 12 divine generals from 13th century Japan. He also compares it to 16 arhats, second in a series of 8 from 14th century Japan. This is what's here on my slide. And if you notice, you'll see that those decadent shadows and wavy line drapery that are present in the Rijksmuseum Museum Avalokiteshvara are also present in these paintings, speaking to how these techniques are Japanese. My thoughts on his analysis? Well, I like his show of evolution using art historical analysis and comparative analysis and stylistic and iconographic analysis. It really shows you how these styles evolved and come together. And we also know that Japanese artists did copy these styles, especially styles from Korea, from the war and migration of these paintings. But I also want to consider that he needs maybe more evidence or more to his analysis, such as UV and infrared technology. I recall in Pat Graham's guest lecture on art appraisal and art identification that these technologies were available in 2018 when this article was published. So I think that it would be even better for his analysis if he put more effort into showing a technological side to his analysis. Because these technologies can show maybe what Wong had missed, such as back painting and gold pigment or green pigment that was rubbed off. If I was going to study and write an article about this Avalokiteshvara in question, the Rijksmuseum Avalokiteshvara, then I would certainly consider using these technologies just for the nuance or extra clarification of it. And here are my sources, and thanks for watching.